family. This is Shannon Jackson, the People's Nurse. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Living Your Life Without Limits. Today, we're going to be talking about monkeypox. And I have a special guest joining me today, none other than Dr. Danielle Ompad, who is the Interim Associate Dean of Academic and Faculty Affairs at NYU School of Global Public Health. Stay tuned.
Wake up, everybody, let's elevate your mind. Live your life without limits, no more wasting time. Don't forget.
Once again, family, this is Shannon Jackson, the People's Nurse. I'm so glad to bring you. You asked for it, and now it's here. And we have our expert on this subject matter, none other than affectionately known as Dr. Danny, that's going to dive into the monkeypox. Dr. Danny, how are you?
I am really well, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It is my honor and privilege to have you with your expertise and talent to come on this show. So thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule. But I want to just dive into it. So many of the fans have been asking me, Shannon, when are you going to bring on monkeypox? Because everybody's been hearing and people are getting concerned of what's happening. So I want you to walk us through truth and facts versus what's out there running around on the internet and all of that. So first of all, what is actually monkeypox and how is it caused?
Sure. So monkeypox is a viral infection. It is caused by a pox virus that is similar to smallpox or vaccinia virus. There are a bunch of pox viruses, actually. And it causes basically lesions on the skin that may look like bug bites. They start off red and flat, and then they become pustules, so they might look like pimples. And then the pustules burst, and they turn into scabs. It can be very itchy and painful. And the way you get this disease, there are actually several ways to get it. In the beginning, when we first recognized this disease, most of the transmission was either from animal to human or from human to human, so person-to-person transmission. And that usually happens, the person-to-person transmission, through respiratory droplets or from skin-to-skin contact or contact with the infectious material from the scabs or the blisters. So it can also infect like clothing or sheets. So for example, if you have monkeypox and you have the scabs and you're sleeping in a bed, you could contaminate the sheets or the blankets with monkeypox.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now, I want to just open this up because you're hearing a lot of people saying it's directly associated or more people coming down with it are of the homosexual or lesbian or gay community. Is that truth or fact, or why would that be so? If it's
Sure.
Based on your explanation of it.
Sure.
Like
So
anybody could catch it.
anybody absolutely can catch it. In the United States, in this current outbreak, the majority of the cases are among men, and particularly gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men. So it is person-to-person contact through infectious material. That contact could be you and I sitting next to each other on the subway, but it could also be intimate contact. That could be kissing, it could be hugging, it could be intercourse, it could be oral sex. So it absolutely can be transmitted through intimate contact, but that is not the only way it can be transmitted. So right now, the majority of the cases have been among gay men and bisexual men, probably because the first cases may have been among gay men and, they were hanging out with other gay men. But it is not limited to only gay men.
Is it because of maybe a lack of education on how to, if you have contracted monkeypox, how to care for, and it's just spreading because there's a lack of knowledge there? Because people are saying, well, are they, typing us as if we're carriers of something when it's something that can be crossed to everyone? Or is it more because there's been less education among that group that initially started being carriers?
That's a great question. So I think part of it is when the disease was, first came to the US, the general public didn't know much about monkeypox. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you look at pictures of the early stage of the rash or the lesions that happen, they could be mistaken for bug bites. So or pimples or something like that. So people might not necessarily know that they have monkeypox. So I suspect that part of it is people just not knowing about monkeypox, and that's not because, in the beginning, it's not because people were not paying attention. It's more because it was a relatively new infection that we've seen in the US. And then I also think that people might not have realized that they were infected by the time the rash began to show. So I wouldn't, I think trying to stigmatize or discriminate against gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men is not really the way to go. It's one, it's not helpful. Two, I don't think that this community has not done everything that they can to protect themselves.
I agree. And that's the reason why I wanted to bring that up, because I don't want it to create an alarm. One, that is just one stereotype or stigma to one population versus others, and for other people to feel, well, I can't catch it because I'm not this, which is either both are incorrect. So, so what do we do to first, before we go into treatment on it, what are some of the things that we can do to prevent developing monkeypox? Because like you said, many people, the first thing, if they get a blister or something, they think, one, even a mosquito bite. People think, oh, I got a mosquito bite, right? Or something like that. What are some of the things that we can do to be more cautious in a public health arena? Just, being more aware and what we can do to prevent such a thing from happening, contacting it or spreading it if we already contacted it.
I think there are several things that we can do. I think if you do not have monkeypox, but you're worried about getting monkeypox, and you're in a group that is perhaps at high risk at the moment for getting monkeypox, you can be a little judicious in thinking about hanging out in large groups, right? Because again, not all the cases among gay men are going to be because of intimate sexual contact, right? People could be hanging out in bars or parks with their friends, but when we hang out, we're hugging each other, we're touching each other. So I think being thoughtful about skin to skin contact and even close contact, like being close to each other when you're speaking, might be something to reconsider if you have friends or no friends who might have come into contact with monkeypox. If you're a part of a community that may be at increased risk through intimate sexual contact, you might want to reconsider the activities that you're engaging in right now, right? So you might want to rethink having intercourse, whether oral, anal, or vaginal. You might want to reconsider, having, even if you're not having sex, being very close to each other, hugging or kissing for the moment, and think of alternative activities. Now, they might not be as fun. I acknowledge that, but there are other things that we can do to be intimate with each other without touching. So masturbating in front of each other, phone sex, cyber sex. There are all sorts of alternatives to do that. Not necessarily as satisfying, maybe not the experience that you're looking for, but maybe something to try for the moment until we get this infection under control, particularly if you're starting to see it move your friends or your sexual partners. The other thing we can do is, if you think that you might have been exposed, and or if you start to see something that looks like a bug bite, or you're starting to have pain in your genital area or in your anus, and you're not sure what it is, if you start to see lesions, then perhaps refrain from hanging out with people in close quarters so that you don't transmit it to other people. If you have a partner and they're not showing symptoms, you might not want to sleep in the same bed until you can confirm that you either have or don't have monkeypox. I would say that this is not something to panic about, but it is something to be concerned about and to pay attention to.
So the high risk category is still isolated to what groups?
Right now, the majority of the cases are among men and among gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men.
Now, I'm hearing that the children are also, there's a few cases that have developed with children. Is that correct too?
That is true. There have been a few cases of children or people under the age of 18 getting infected with monkeypox.
Because I think about the kids that are in kindergarten or, preschool, they playing and touching, with each
Oh
other all the
yeah, they
time.
don't know how not to touch each
Yeah,
other.
exactly. That's just how they interact. So a couple of people are worried that is this going to put us into another lockdown? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure that it'll put us into a lockdown, mainly because I think that the American public is not going to be down for that. I think that the previous lockdowns had a substantial effect on our personal and work lives and our school lives. And so I suspect that that would be a last resort. However, I am concerned because we are heading into back to school. And I'm less concerned about the little ones at the moment and more concerned maybe about college students or high school students, and particularly students who are coming back to school and they're living in congregate settings like dorms. And so I really want those folks, those folks maybe 16, 17, 18 to 25 who are going to be living in congregate settings to be very thoughtful about, how they're in contact with people, keeping an eye on any rashes that they might have, and being careful about possible transmission. Although that's not to say that the little ones couldn't be infected. And obviously, if you're living in a household with somebody who has monkeypox, it's absolutely possible to become infected, right? I mean, you could have two dads, one of whom, went to a club, was hanging out with his friends, got infected. And we all know that the little ones like to crawl in bed with their parents, on a Saturday morning or whatever. Could have been infected because dad didn't know that he had monkeypox, right?
Mhm.
So I know that there's been a narrative in some circles about abuse of children, and that's how they're getting monkeypox. I would venture to say that the majority of kids that get monkeypox in this epidemic are not getting it that way. It's going to be something more benign, probably dad or mom or another kid. They've come in contact with them through, regular everyday contact.
So there is not enough vaccine supply out. At least that's what's being said on the media. Have you heard anything more about production on that? Or are they just going to do like they did when we rolled out the COVID vaccine high risk categories first, and then as we continue to go along, they'll continue to expand the criteria? Or
Yeah,
what are your thoughts
so
on that?
I think in terms of the vaccine right now, epidemiologically, it makes sense to prioritize high risk groups because it is not the entire US that is at high risk at the moment. And perhaps we won't all ever be at high risk, right? So at the moment, it makes sense to focus on communities that are seeing the majority of the cases. There has been a proposal, which I think they passed, for diluting one of the vaccines so that you get more doses per vial by changing the way they administer the vaccine. And so that it will hopefully increase the number of doses available. And then it's my understanding that they're also trying to increase production.
Any final thoughts on this subject matter that can kind of calm the community and the public awareness, but yet keep us informed and prepared so that we, can go in caution, but also with knowledge of how to be preventative?
So I think what you've said is on point, which is be cautious and thoughtful. And so I think staying up to date with the latest information, keeping in mind that information is going to change over time. It's not because we don't know what we're doing. It's because we're learning more about the outbreak as we see more cases. If you're at risk, if somebody has gotten monkeypox, you might want to consider getting vaccinated if you were in close contact with them. And your ability to do that is going to vary based on where you live, and how you go about doing that is going to be based on where you live. But a lot of health departments are having great campaigns to communicate how to go about doing that. But the smartest thing you can do is just stay informed as much as possible and be very thoughtful about being in close contact with people, particularly if anybody in your network thinks that they might have monkeypox.
Thank you so much, Dr. Danny, for your time. How can we follow you and continue to get those updates online? Why don't you tell us that so we can add that here?
Sure. So my Twitter handle is at Danielle Ompad. So that's at DANIEOMPAD. And so I post every now and then, probably not as much as I should. But you can also check out the website for the New York University School of Global Public Health. We often have information for the general public, and we just did a webinar on monkeypox a few weeks ago, and that is actually available online right now.
Excellent, well said. So there you have it, family. We have straight from our expert on the subject matter. So I think she's already said it all. The only thing I will add is that hand hygiene is always very important in every condition. We saw that a lot with the COVID spread. So continue to wash your hands and change your bedding more often, and even be very conservative of who you have in your close space. So once again, as always, family, we thank Dr. Danny for her time. And most of all, we thank you for tuning in each week to Living Your Life Without Limits. My goal as the host of this show is to bring you education, motivation, and inspiration that will allow you to continue to live your life without limits. And as I end this show, and I often do, remember, family, to love yourself. Take care of yourself, because guess what? You are absolutely worth it. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.